So today is your first day of video lessons, which means this is the first day you're going to have to watch videos by yourself. It's no big deal. You actually get to pause and stop the video whenever you want to catch up on the notes. This is the last set of notes that we took in our books. So what you're going to do, tomorrow in class you're going to get your new unit tab. So what you're going to do is we're going to skip this page entirely and go to the next page, and that's where we're going to start taking our next set of notes. Okay? So our next set of notes are going to be over the parts of an equation. And then after we do that, you'll watch another video where we talk about how to write equations from slope-intercept, from tables, equations in slope-intercept form from tables and graphs. So first of all, we're going to start by writing slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And then we're going to name the parts of that equation. This can be big. Okay, so first of all, y. Y is what we call our dependent variable. We also call it our output variable because I do a whole bunch of stuff to x and out pops a y value. Okay? X here is called our independent variable. And it's also called our input because I put this into the x value, do a bunch of stuff to it, and then out pops the y value. Okay? Now we're going to focus a little bit on slope and y-intercept. Okay? Because I want you to know, we took these notes kind of on the wall, but I want you to have them in your book. Okay? So M stands for slope. That's why we call this slope-intercept form, because we have the slope and the y-intercept. So M stands for slope. Okay? We can find slope in basically three ways. We can do delta y over delta x. We can do rise over run. That's rise over run before y'all start criticizing my handwriting. Or we can use the slope formula, which we have on our formula chart. Okay, so hang on, let me check. Let me mess with the focus. Oh, that's a little better. All right, so that's how we can find the slope. Okay, now the slope is also called multiple different things. So let's scooch down a little bit here. So we call the slope, remember we talked about how the slope has a whole lot of different names, and that we use them in different situations, just like I'm Mrs. Deal, or Maggie, or Mommy, or Sweetheart. I have all kinds of different names, but they're still referring to me. So we also have, it's called rate of change. It's called M, like from up here in the slope formula, it's called M. Okay. It's called the coefficient. The coefficient is any number that's in front of a letter. Okay. So in slope-intercept form, it's called the coefficient. Okay. It's also called unit rate. And if it's in direct, in this case we're not talking necessarily kind of a form of slope-intercept form, but if it's in a direct variation, we call it K, which is the constant of, I'm just going to put dV for direct variation. Okay? So those are other things that we call it. Now, in word problems, we have some other things we call it. So it's the word, it's surrounded by per. So per tells me I'm looking at slope. Each, for one, every. All of those words tell me I'm dealing with slope. And then also, if I'm looking at a situation, I'm just trying to figure out what the slope is. The slope is the one, I don't know why I said ye. We pay for over and over. So like for example, the example that I gave you with the with buying parts for your car. I only pay for the parts once, but every hour I have to pay them. So if they work for 1 hour, I pay them for 1 hour of labor. If they work for 5 hours, I pay them for 5 hours of labor. So the price for labor would be my slope because it's the one I have to pay for over and over again, which would make the one that the price that I pay for parts, we would make that my y-intercept, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so that's what we've got for slope and y-intercept. For slope. Now let's talk about y-intercept. Okay, so here is our y-intercept. And again, that's where slope-intercept form gets its name, because it's got the slope and the y-intercept, slope-intercept form. Okay, so we got a few ways we find y-intercept. Okay, so we find it by, like if we look at an ordered pair, it's going to be 0, comma, a number. If we have a table, it's going to be 0, the row where x is 0. And actually, that is a very good description of it's the value of y when x equals 0. On a graph, it's where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so these are all the different ways that we find the y-intercept. We find it from looking at an ordered pair. We see 0, comma, a number. In a table, we would see 0 and the x and number and y. It's whatever the value is of y when x equals 0. So if they give me an equation and I need to find the y-intercept, I plug in a 0 for x. Whatever I get, for y, that's my y-intercept. And it's where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so what are some things that we call the y-intercept? Well, we call it b, and we call it the constant. It doesn't have as many names as the slope does. Okay, we call it the b and we call it the constant. It doesn't have as many names. Okay, now in word problems, it's actually got a lot of different kind of situations. Now, basically, in a word problem, it's anything that's a one time only. But let's give you some examples. Okay, so here's an example. A service fee, a one-time fee. So like if they make you pay for like if they talk about an application, you have to fill out you have a one-time fee for your application. You're renting an apartment monthly, but you have a one-time fee for your application, or you're getting your dog boarded somewhere and you have a one-time fee. Okay. Also, you might see shipping. If I buy one mechanical pencil and have it shipped to me, if I buy 50 mechanical pencils and have it shipped to me on Amazon, if I want it overnight, it's going to cost me $3. So shipping is a constant. Okay. Parts. Like in that example that we just talked about. I pay for the parts once, but I pay over and over again however much it costs me to have them installed. And then we might also see the word minimum. Like, what is the minimum he would pay? Well, if all I want to do is buy a part for my husband's car, well, I pay nothing for labor and $85 for the part. Therefore, the minimum in that linear situation would be just the y-intercept. Okay. Now, when we think about it, when we just look in a word problem, it's the one we pay for only once. Okay. So these are the parts of an equation. This is stuff that you've kind of already seen, but I wanted you to have it because we've talked about it, but you didn't have it written anywhere.